The following Patreon episode is brought to you by our patrons over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. Here to tell you why it's important to become a patron is our favorite guest, Cam Mallow. Cam, why should they become a patron?
It's important to help bring more new episodes.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks, Cam. So if you want to become a patron, go to patreon.com/addressinggettysburg and become one today. We thank you in advance.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, patrons galore, or whatever. Today, we have one of those episodes where we get to know someone who you probably already know of, or are familiar with, or at least are familiar with his work. And that is a fella named Mike Barycki from Civil War Tees. Hello, Mike. Welcome.
Hi, I'm glad you got the pronunciation.
Yes, I had to write it out phonetically. And then also joining us is another Mike. We got two mics on the mic. And this one, of course, you all know him. 6 Questions Lance is with us. He just dropped by and we're like, oh, you free? You want to come and do this? And so he said that he would sit with us and record. So he's joining us today. So we met accidentally on Saturday, you and I, Mike B. I'm going to call you Mike B. And we talked a bit, and then yesterday we went out driving around the battlefield and going to different things, and I had a lot of fun doing that. This is what we were saying before we started 6 Questions, that it was fun yesterday because, you go out alone.
Right.
And you do your thing. Yeah. You think, today I want to go to East Cavalry Field. And then you go to East Cavalry Field and you stand there and you go, and then you go and you read the plaque you wanted to read or see whatever it is that you wanted to see. And then that's about it. And then you go, okay, I'm going to go home. But when you go out with somebody else, you kind of like feed off of each other's curiosities.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so we went, I had to get gas at Sheetz. So we went and got gas at Sheetz. And I said, have you ever been to 2 taverns? And he goes, no.
Oh.
And I said, well, let's go to 2 taverns.
Don't forget that we were supposed to go to Culp's Hill.
We were supposed to go to Culp's Hill. That was the plan.
Oh, okay.
And then, I don't know, maybe I forgot or thought that that would be boring, or I don't know what it was. But
I took a wrong turn at the Sheetz, apparently.
I took a wrong turn at coming out of the Sheetz. I go, yeah, well, because I kind of got the sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike B. I kind of got the sense that as much as you know and as familiar as you are with the battlefield and the surrounding areas, certain things, because you don't maybe live here or you don't get a chance to come here for too many days in a row, certain things that are kind of outlying as far as where they're located and stuff, maybe you don't have much access to or whatever. So I thought, well, 2 taverns, that's a good place to go.
Yeah.
And just see where it is so that you get an idea of the proximity of it all. And so we went down there, and then from there we decided, well, let's try to get to East Cavalry Field like Custer did. We took the wrong road. He took the Low Dutch Road, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah, and we took that other road that's down there. And then it was while we were out there, and then we hit the Hanover Road, turned left, and we were heading. And I wasn't sure where that put us out because I can't remember the name of the road. Damn it! What was the name of the road? Do you remember?
So it goes to Bonneville.
Yeah, I think it was like 2 Taverns Road or something like that. Yeah. But it goes right out to Bonneville. Okay. And so from there we were driving along then we see the Low Dutch Road, and I go, no, wait, maybe Custer came out the Low Dutch Road. I think he came out the Low Dutch Road. So we turned on the Low Dutch Road, went out on East Cavalry Field, looked at a couple things there, drove around. And as we were driving, we got to talking about hills and Oak Hill and Benner's Hill. And from there, from East Cavalry Field, we were trying to figure out which hills in the distance we could see. And then we realized, I'm like, no, that's not what we think it is. And then we said, no, we got to go. So I said, here's what we'll do. Let's go to Oak Hill, and I'll point out Benner's and Cemetery Hill, and then we'll go to Cemetery Hill, and we'll point out Benner's and Oak Hill, and then we'll go to Benner's Hill, and we'll point out all the other ones. And so you could see where they are in relation and what you can see from each one. And we did, and it was very enjoyable, and I liked it. And I wouldn't have done that although I've done it before by myself. I wouldn't have done that if Mike wasn't with me. I wouldn't have been out there because it's cold and I want to stay in the house and I hate the cold. So thank you for that, Mike. But Mike is an interesting guy. He's a funny guy. To me, the thing that I am most impressed with in regards to you is that you took the guide exam when you were 15 years old.
Yeah, it was about 14 days before my 15th birthday.
So you were 14 years old.
Yeah, December of 1997.
And you got a good grade, I would say, considering you were a teenager and you didn't study for it. It was kind of like a thing that your dad was just like, hey, this would be fun. Let's sign you up for this, right?
Well, we were in the old visitor center,
right?
And they had the little thing back there saying when the next
guide exam.
They thought it was going to be in December, but this would have been a year before that. Actually, I think when my dad got signed up, and my dad's like, "I want to sign my son up for that." I'm like, "Dad,
come on, dude."
He's like, "No, you do it. You have fun." I'm like, "All right." So you put his name, and the guy's like, "Well, how old's your son?" He's like, "Oh, he's 13. Be 14." He's like, well, he doesn't have a driver's license. He can't be a guide. He's like, I'll just let him take the test. He's like, all right, we'll put his name down.
Yeah, you weren't trying to be a guide. You just want to see. He just wanted to see if you knew what you knew.
Yeah, he knew
what you knew.
He was proud of me of the things I knew when we were going around the battlefield that day, of how much I sponged up and how much I learned.
Right.
Just from reading books. And this is, 1996, 97, the internet exists, but we're not really getting our sources from the internet at that time.
Yeah, it's not really integrated into our daily life.
And my dad had some Civil War books. I always used to read through those. That series of silver books. Is it the Time Life?
I have
books?
Time Life. Yeah.
Time Life. Yeah. So for me, because when I was real young, I thought it was called the Silver War. Because the books are silver. It's like, it's a Silver War. I know that one. Yeah, I was reading about that.
Well, I thought that before the books came out. I just misunderstood what people were saying. But yeah.
Absolutely, because they sound exactly the same.
Yeah. And then I found my cousin's son, when he was a little kid, he said the same thing. And so it's a common mistake. You're not an idiot.
So I was doing that. And then I got into, this was around the time when certain games or computer games and stuff were coming out. So I learned my order of battle and things from certain games. And
Sid Meier's Gettysburg.
What was your go-to?
Yeah.
What was the one that you went to the most as far as playing?
When did Sid Meier's Gettysburg come out?
It was like 97. 90s. It has to be 97.
It might have been right around that same time. That was my favorite.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just
great.
It was fantastic.
For a good mix of being a real-time game, but still having to use certain strategies and certain things like that.
I can still hear reinforcements have arrived.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I can still hear General Meade going, General Sickles, I thought I told you not to go, or whatever the hell he says to him.
And all those different scenarios.
Yeah, the way they acted them out. So yeah, Sid Meier's Gettysburg. I loved that game. I played that incessantly, like to the point where I would close my eyes at night and I would see the little figures. Like it was bad. And but I actually knew the whole order of battle at that point because of that game and locations. You said yesterday Sheepshaven Hill, and I very rarely hear people ever refer to that. And I said to you, I haven't heard that name since I played Sid Meier's Gettysburg 30 years ago.
It was listed as.
Yeah,
no, absolutely.
And that was pretty cool there. So all right, so you what did you get on the exam? Was it 74?
74 out of like 104, I think it was.
Okay,
wow.
But that's not bad considering everything.
No, I thought 85 was what you needed to go to the interview stages,
right?
The next level. So
I'd be lucky when I take the exam if I get a 7 or a 4. So to 74, that'd be great.
As I understand it as well, it was a little bit different in that older style test.
Yeah.
Perhaps a bit easier. So that might have helped me a bit. I don't know. But again, limited, I think that's offset by the fact of limited resources. I mean, you had to really earn or buy books, or go to the library if you wanted to study.
Yeah.
I didn't study, but if I wanted to, I would have had to have actually studied.
So, but at that age, though, where did you get that information? Did you read books about it, or
my
did you
dad,
just
my
go
dad
to...
had not a ton, but a good amount of Civil War books.
Okay, so you
World
just
War
read
II
those books.
Yeah, I'm around the house, just sponged it all up. I mean, for me, it was, I think the first time we came to Gettysburg was 91, maybe 91. And just, 2 years after that, the movie comes out, right? And I know a lot of people today, it's easy to crap on the movie, for all the small things that when we've watched it 100 times, we're like, oh, that guy's, I see that guy's pinky
The more,
ring.
the more you watch it, the more unforgiving you become.
But the fact is that in glory for someone of my age, provided visuals for me. It helped me understand things, and it made that big connection. So it's one thing to go to a national park and see monuments, and it's another thing when you saw that movie. When I saw that movie,
right.
and I see Sam Elliott, it's like, oh,
yeah.
And then I'm like, oh my God, he looks like the guy in the statue, but you make those visual connections, and it kind of ties you into it. So
absolutely,
for me, Gettysburg was the most. That movie was so influential to my love and wanting to study.
Are you an idiot like me, where
yes.
you learn better when you see?
Yeah, I think I'm both.
Yeah.
I like to see things. I'm going to say yes, because usually if I'm reading something, I even if it's not seeing something in action, I want to see a place.
Right.
So I'll get my map book out.
Right.
And I can read that maps, but I want to go out there and I have it with me, and I want to stand in that spot, and I want to see, okay. It makes sense. And to the point where when you and I were talking yesterday about, I said, I've never been to Gettysburg with snow on the ground in the wintertime.
Right.
Oh,
and
yes.
I said, I've learned, because I was walking I've been here for 9 days now, but 5 of those days I was doing 2-3 hour walks by myself.
Yeah.
And when you talk about seeing things, when you can see the slopes and you can see the undulations, especially Culp's Hill was the biggest one for me, is I understood things a lot more because now I can see the ground. I can see, different areas. Call Grove Avenue, the little hill that's up there. I can see why the 2nd Massachusetts and 27th Indiana would have been very unhappy
to
leaving that spot, because that's a nice little commanding hill.
Yeah.
And in the summertime, you just can't appreciate that. You can't see how they would have seen it. And I know they're doing amazing work on Culp's Hill with the
clearing and everything.
But even with that, you'll just never get a better look than I've gotten in the last week, especially with the snow on the ground, because from a distance, you can see where the slope is because that white gives it away.
It helps provide a contrast for you to see. Yeah, no, it's too bad that you have to deal with cold air in order to witness it that way. But that is one of the beauties of coming here in the winter. What was the other beauty that we pointed out that when I first picked you up? Remember what we were saying? It's like you have the whole place to yourself.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Nobody else is here.
No, it's just a couple people walking here and there.
Yeah.
And then when you see them, you're like really excited. When 2 dogs see each other, and it's like, oh, it's a dog, it's a dog. That's how I felt. Like I'm walking by the white girl. I'm like, oh, hi, person. And, they're terrified. And they turn around and go the other way. And
they think you have COVID.
Yeah, I just want to be, it's like we're both walking on the battlefield today.
It's right. We just have something in common. That's all.
Jeez.
Just want to say hi to you.
So I didn't make any friends. I scared about 5 people. But yeah, there's something, especially with the snow out there and just the way the leaves are, it's just so serene and so quiet.
Yes.
That my thinking time, I got to think so much, and, without cars, zooming by. And I know the tourist season is important. I love coming in the summertime because you get that wonderful Adams County heat to beat you in the submission.
Yeah.
Where like you open the car door and then get back in and just keep the air on.
Right.
But no, but this has been my favorite. Like I said, I've been coming since 1990, 91 by myself. Since I could drive all the time, 4, 5, 6 times a year, and I've never enjoyed a trip like I have this one.
Is that because you're just staying for 9 days, or
no? I think it's because
because of the time of the year that you came.
The time of year I came, and the fact that I'm out there walking, which is something I picked up over the last couple of years, is enjoying walking, not learning how to walk. Well, yes. But getting out and just walking instead of driving from point to point to point. So I, instead of driving so the first thing I did, instead of walking that Confederate Avenue loop up around Culp's Hill, I parked near the Culp farm, that entrance there, and I walked all East Confederate Avenue, walked all the way up, around the Pardee Field, all the way up Culp's Hill, all the way down Stevens Knoll, and you appreciate what you drive by all the time. There's certain markers I didn't know existed.
Right.
And I know they exist because I had that, I don't know who wrote it. It was like published in 1918, around then. It was a monument book. It was horizontal monument book.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
And I don't remember who made it, but
I don't either.
It has every marker, every picture of everything, and you flip through and I used to see that. But now that I've gotten out, there's certain little markers like that advanced marker, and I can't remember the regiment, the New York regiment on Culp's Hill, where they had their skirmishers out. It's one of the 120 something.
Was it 129th? Is that what we said? But I think when I said that, I think I was confusing it with the 29th PA.
Could be. It's definitely a New York regiment, and it's out in front of the breastworks. It's right before this. That
is it the 102nd or 78th?
Nope, it's well before that.
Okay.
It's before. Anyway.
Consult the Lano.
Yeah, but it was just I read the monument, and it was a monument that has four sides of stuff written on it. So I never would have read the opposite side unless I was walking. And it talked about how they sent skirmishers out. And there was a marker out into the woods there. So I went into over the breastworks. Mm-hmm. Down towards Culp's Hill,
right.
Towards the Confederate sign. And you can see, as I'm walking, you just saw the slope start to go down.
Interesting.
And I said, I bet that marker is where that slope starts to go down. Mm. And it is. It's right up there. And so it makes sense in the wintertime. You can see why, if you're behind those breastworks,
right,
that you could say, okay, let's send skirmishers out there because it's a better look of what's coming at us than where we are now.
Right.
Absolutely.
But again, that's just one of those things. If I wasn't walking, I never would have read that. I never would have gone out, and I never would have even known that.
And that's the value of what Matt does with the Get Out of the Car tours.
Yep.
Is you have to go out there and actually walk the field in order to actually understand some of these things
and appreciate some of those things.
Are we talking about? We're not talking about the 107th New York, are we?
Could be. I'm not going to remember what it is.
Where exactly was this?
You come out of Spangler Spring.
Yes.
Right. It's on the right hand side. It's one of. It might even be one of Kane.
Is it like immediately when you come out, like you start going up the hill there?
It's before that. It's before that little big dip down there. You know where the road goes down and around.
The one that goes into Party Field.
Yeah. No, it's the main road, not the Party Field road.
Right. So you're saying you go right on the main road.
Yep.
Up the hill.
Yep.
And is it right there?
No, it's just a little. It's about between. You know when the road goes down and it swerves all the way around. It's right there on the right hand side.
123rd.
It could be. That sounds exactly
right next to the 111th PA.
That
and
might
the
be
20th Connecticut, in between them.
That might be it. I apologize for this long diatribe of having that.
Well, it's okay. We had to figure it out.
We'll get back to you on that.
Yeah. We're going to circle back.
We'll find out in the comments section.
The short part of that is get out and walk.
Well, that's the idea. Yes. Another reason for you to get out and walk. So, I mean, get out of the car. On this show, we say get out of the car. Okay, so genius at 15 years old. Later on in life, you start doing T-shirts. I know we're skipping a lot of years, but we don't have all the time in the world. How did you get into the whole T-shirt game? Because people know you. I know. I'm very confident that at least 9 out of 10 listeners know Civil War tees. I'm telling you.
If you say that's wonderful.
Mike knows.
It would be about 10 years ago now because it was Hurricane Sandy, which probably affected people you know.
I was in New Jersey when it happened, and I lived in a basement and froze to death with, I would have 2 dogs in my bed with me to keep warm. And that's where I learned the meaning of the term 3-dog night, because I was almost warm, but I needed that 3rd dog on the other side, and I didn't have one. But yeah, that was tough.
Yeah, so after that happened, I happened to be working with a few friends that had a Philadelphia sports shirt company. And they asked me to come in and just kind of help them out with stuff. And I was developing this new market for them, these creative sports shirts, putting my creativity to use, for the first time, because I'm a creative guy and I can think of fun things. And I went on Craigslist and I was looking for people up in that area that might want to help me develop some shirts. And one of the people that replied is this guy, Brian. So then him and I started to work together. At first, we had some really terrible looking shirts, like horrific, like, oh, well, this stinks. This isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. And then we finally made one that was a home run. Well, Brian was looking.
Which shirt was that?
It was a New York company. It was New York shirts. It was a.
Oh, it wasn't a Civil War shirt.
No, it was sports shirt stuff.
Gotcha.
Giants stuff.
Giant stuff. They got all the good merchandise. They just can't actually win enough to make it worth buying the merchandise.
So he was looking for that kind of work because they had lost a lot of property and money in Hurricane Sandy. So that's how we kind of found each other, was working that way. Years later, him and I go off and we start our own company called Broad Street Legends in my area, Philadelphia sports stuff. And we've been doing that for, like I said, that's about 7 years or 8 years now. We've had Broad Street Legends. That was successful. we making creative sports shirts. We had a nice market. We had fun doing it. And then one day I said, "Hey, Brian, I have an idea."
Yeah,
That's funny.
Did you say it that way?
Yeah, I said, "Hey, Brian." You know, that like he knows it's like, are you breaking up with me? It's like, "Hey, Brian." Now, what's funny is we've been working together for years at this point. Yet we never met in person.
Ah, yes, one of those.
So everything we did was...
It's a modern relationship.
Yeah, because he went out to Cincinnati, where he's from, moved the whole family out there. So we developed this whole Philadelphia sports brand through things like Trello, you know, phone calls, things like that. And it takes a long time for someone like him, who's an artist, graphic designer, to be able to get the ideas that are in my head that I'm telling him into art. And that takes years and years of practice. So we're in our prime, and I said, "Hey, Brian, why don't we make, now get this, Civil War shirts?" And he's like, "No, I'm not going to make Civil War shirts." He's like, "No." I'm like, "No, listen. I think it'll work. You know, I think it'll work because of all the things that don't work for the sports shirts company. So the sports shirt stuff, you know, you can't use trademark things.
Right.
You can't use names. You have to be really creative.
Can't use somebody's image.
Yeah, can't use image. When the teams are bad, you're not selling anything. Everything is impulsive." And I said, "Look, you know, this is what I've done my whole life. These are my people. This is my environment. And I think if we use that same level of creativity and created things that would never go out of style, right? We can use all the images we want, all the names we want, and it's not going to sell dependent on if a team's winning or losing." I said, "I think it'll have staying power if we make something creative." Because when we go into town to Gettysburg, not to knock most of the shirts, but a lot of the stuff is very, you know, Battle of Gettysburg with a cannon on it. You know, it's like, well, that's cool. You know, some guy.
It's old. It's outdated. It's been rehashed for 40 years.
Yeah.
And it's meant to capture that one-time visitor who's just passing on.
Yeah, it's like a memento. I was here kind of thing.
Yep.
And I said, well, let's make something that starts a conversation, right? Let's make something that's so creative that you know what it is. You can appreciate it if you're a history nerd, but it also blends into a modern setting where you could go to the bar wearing a shirt and someone goes, "What's that?"
Yeah.
Boom.
Which is what I love about them is that because that's what I try to do with this is like I try to have modern sensibilities while talking about the past. And that includes the humor, that includes the perspective, even though I always try to keep it as like, well, they didn't think that way in 1863 at the end of the day. But it's so fun to just kind of dip your toes in that every once in a while. But that's what I love about your shirts. I don't remember the first shirt that I saw. I think it was, don't you have one with, do you have one with Sherman and he's wearing a birthday hat and holding balloons or something?
Yeah, it's better than that.
Oh.
It's Buford and Reynolds, and it says, let's go surprise Harry Heath. Yeah.
That's right. And I don't remember if that was the first one I saw of yours, but that was the first one that really made me like, lift the corner of my mouth and go.
Yeah. Well, I'll give credit to my friend.
Yeah, there it is.
That was an idea. Most of the ideas that we have.
How much are your shirts? Oh, 24. Okay. I thought it said 44.
A reasonable amount. For you, 44.
For me, yeah.
Thank you. My friend
I'm
Jeff.
honored.
My friend Jeff had that idea. Now, Jeff comes up with a lot of ideas, right? He has all these ideas, and most of them I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. Because we only try and make, bangers, right? You only want the good stuff. You don't want to fill up the website with other things. And he had this idea, and I was like, okay, I guess it's kind of funny. And it was like a year or something later, and I thought, that's actually really funny. I said, Jeff, we're going to try and make this into a shirt. So that was his idea.
Talk about a joke grenade. That's a long.
It's a long time.
Pause.
Yeah.
That's a cook off.
This is my apology to Jeff.
Okay. Then let me give you the floor.
Yeah. But no, it's funny. It's creative. If you've seen the movie Gettysburg, you'll find it funny. But even if not, it's just. I mean, he's sitting there with
goofy,
a party
it's
hat.
funny, yeah. And also, let's say you're somebody who doesn't really understand that joke, but you see the shirt and you know enough to know that they're Civil War guys, but you don't know who they are, and you see them that way. You're not used to seeing that, and that's kind of the charm of the whole thing. Is that you're seeing. These people that we always see as these like heroic, stoic, statues. Now look at they're kind of goofy and they're wearing party hats and they want to go surprise Harry Heath. And it's funny. It's a clever play on what that means. And and then the other ones too that I see I really like. I love the Lucky Charms one. And And it's great that you found someone who can translate your ideas onto an actual graphic design, and that's like with Ty DeWitt that we work with for our stuff. He's very talented with that, and I don't have to. It doesn't take much. Like if I get an idea, I say, "Hey Ty, I have an idea, kind of like this, blah blah blah," and he goes, "Okay, let me work up a couple of things," and he'll send me a couple of things, and he'll either like get it right away or he won't, and then I'm like, no, it's got to be more like this, and then I'll send him like a picture of something I drew on a Post-it note with stick figures and just lines and stuff, and he's able to do that. And if you can't do that, it's like a blessing if you can find somebody who can and is willing to do it and be like, well, yeah, but you got to pay me X amount for me to do it. And Ty's like, I'll just. At the end of the year, we'll see how much we all made and we'll split it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's perfect.
And Ty does really good faces, especially. Like that's something that,
yes.
And it's hard for people, so Brian is really good with his graphic design, but he's not necessarily someone that can do what Ty does.
Is that why you got Ty?
So for the Lucky Charms design, when I saw it in my head, right, I saw it, okay, oh my God, it'd be so funny if we did like a Lucky Charms box and it'll say like, it's magically victorious, or something like that, right? So, and I'm thinking, and then we can use like the General Mills type logo, but make it like a G for George.
Yeah.
Oh. And so, and I thought, and I'm thinking, well, Brian's not going to be able to do this, right? Not get Mead's face right.
Because of the face.
Yeah, and we didn't want to use, necessarily a stock image per se. Because I wanted it to I knew how I wanted it to look.
Right.
And I followed Ty's stuff for a while, and I've seen some of the work he did, and I thought, man, it'll just be perfect. Like, to put this together, and he's just the perfect guy. So all three of us put our talents together to make that shirt. And it's one of my favorite shirts because of that.
Yeah.
And, we brought him into the system of how we were doing it, and it was just neat to something Brian and I have done so naturally for so long. It was cool to have someone come in and be part of that with us. And it's one of my favorite shirts.
Yeah.
As a finished product.
Again, it's mixing the old and the new, and it works too. What he's got, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not familiar with this, is it's George Meade, and he's surrounded by a horseshoe, and on the horseshoe are all of the corps badges of the Army of the Potomac. Those are his Lucky Charms. Very clever. And then there's the G for General Mills. How do you have that? Where is that? What were you pointing to, Mike?
There, the General Mills.
Oh, is that what it is?
What
yeah. Okay. So
General
what does
Meade.
it say? General Meade?
It says George Meade.
George Meade.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
They're magically victorious.
Magically victorious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's cute. It's brilliant. People can enjoy that for sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really a horseshoe, or is that supposed to be a rainbow?
I think that's a rainbow, like right off of basic look of just like if you
the
look at
Lucky
the
Charms
box.
box.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the text box are actually clouds.
Let me see. I can't see that far away. I should have had you describe it. I got it here. Okay. Oh, yeah. So it's like a rainbow. I see.
Yeah, just more of an outline kind of thing.
Yeah. But it's great, regardless.
Very creative.
All right. So then where do you want to how far? What do you want to do with Civil War tees? Like, how far do you want to go with it?
Well, for the last few years, it's supplemented my own income. So I just finished 3 years of school in England.
Right. That was the next thing I wanted to get to. So you went over to England to get your master's.
Yeah.
Naturally in American Civil War studies, right?
Yeah. So, well, I started to use my GI Bill. I got out of the service in 2006, and they had a.
What branch were you in?
I was in the Air Force. I was an electrician on HH-60 helicopters, so avionics.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah.
And now I sell T-shirts.
Well, now you can get it. You can move here and get a job at like Ag Rotors or something.
Nah, it's those days are past.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry, I was trying.
So I found out that the GI Bill, at least my GI Bill, had a 15-year limit. Use it or lose it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, either did I, until I got a letter saying, hey, just so you know, in 4 years.
Sneaky bastards.
Son of a. So
they get you in with all these promises.
It happened to coincide with a few things. I had an injury and I was out of work for a while, and I decided, you know what, I'm just going to, I had been working in retail management for 10 years at that point. I had some money at some points I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't something for me. It wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I said, I'm just going to blow it all up and I'm going to go to school. And I started going to community college in Gloucester County for a year. And it happened to coincide with me saying, you know what, I'm going to go to England because I've always wanted to go. Loved English history, sport, culture. So I went to England when we had like a 2-week off, like a teacher in service kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we didn't have any classes and I just went and I just fell absolutely in love with the place. And that's when I said, you know what? I'm going to do my degrees here. So I actually finished my bachelor's, my last 2 years, my bachelor's I did in England, and then I stayed and did my master's.
Okay.
Well. So.
And you liked it over there?
I did.
You married and had family over there and left them.
Yes, just to come back here so I can sling T-shirts.
Yeah, a lot of people would say that is horrible. However, I was just watching 1883. Sorry, it wasn't 1883. It was another one. But there was an immigrant. Oh, it was Deadwood, and someone had moved to Deadwood to get established before sending for his wife and kids, who were back in, I think, Montana, or I forget where they were. But the point I'm trying to make is that you were just getting established so that you could bring your English wife and kids over here.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, in reality, you don't have a wife and kids over in England. Well, if you want to let that go.
No, I don't have any wife and kids
I was just trying to protect you from the wife and kids that you have here.
And I did not study the American Civil War.
Right. That's what I was hoping you would correct me on.
I have a master's in medieval studies.
So why medieval studies?
Because when I went to
Mike is incredulous.
Because when I went to England on that trip, I saw castles and cathedrals that were built,
right,
in the 11th and 12th century, and it was just. I've always loved history. There was something fascinating to touch something that had been there for 1,000 years. It was just something, and to go through a town and to see that, the first pub I went into, shout out to the King's Head in Canterbury, was built in the 15th century.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it has it's a continuous license. So that's been a pub.
That's crazy.
For 500.
What's crazy is that you had to have a liquor license back then. I thought the licensing for liquor and stuff was something that's more of the post-Civil War era in the United States, but no, that's everywhere.
Business license, you have to pay taxes.
But a liquor license, I didn't think.
No,
that
it wasn't
a
liquor. It was licensed to be a tavern.
Not
a liquor license as we would think of it today.
Right, because people were freer back then. All right, so
a little bit.
Not there necessarily.
So I enjoyed that, and then when I went to do my bachelor's over there, I just chose all medieval options. I'd never studied medieval history before.
Right. So where do they start? Where does the medieval? I don't study it. So where does what event do they say is the start of the medieval era?
It's not necessarily an event. I would say call it 1,000 to late 1400s. Basically.
So it's a year.
It's not a definitive thing. It's what's going on in the world, coming out of late antiquity, and people call it the Dark Ages. Even though the Dark Ages aren't that dark, they're still writing.
No, they had sun back then,
and they did have sun.
Right.
But it's really around 1,000 when Christianity itself becomes this massive influence in all of Europe. And
the term medieval, because everybody calls it medieval.
Yeah, but
that's not
it's definitely medieval.
Yeah, but all right. So you study that, that history, and then you come back over here. And when did you come back?
October, just late October.
Oh, so recently.
Yep.
So all this time you've been over there. Mm-hmm. I did not know that.
Yeah, well, I came home for the summers, except this past summer, because the master's study was a whole, basically 13 months straight through kind of thing.
Right.
So I finished my dissertation, submitted it, and then I came back here.
How hard is it, because you're, 39, you said? Mm-hmm. How hard is it to go back to school in your late 30s?
Undergrad was definitely different.
Yeah.
Undergrad living in another country was doubly different. The master's wasn't so bad because most of the people were older, mid-20s, or there's a handful that were my age as well. But it's funny because, I went to school 2001 and went to York College of Pennsylvania, where I failed out of school.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And well, hey, now, all those years later, I'm a master of, something that I had never even studied or thought I would fall in love with.
Do you think if you hadn't failed out, you would have gone on to do that?
No, I think the reason I really wanted to go back to school was I wanted to get my bachelor's and close that door of disappointment.
So it was something that you left undone.
Yeah.
And maybe did you find that maybe, because I often think that if I went back to school today, I would probably ace all my classes because I'm older and wiser, and I would probably appreciate the education more that I didn't back then. Because it was just something I was forced to do my whole life. It's, you got to get good grades so you can go to college. You got to get good grades so you can go to college. And I'm like, why the fuck do I want to go to college? Forget part of my French. Yeah. But I had no designs. Like I never wanted to do this specifically, but I always wanted to do something like this where I was making my money off of my talents. Because here's the thing, and I don't think that people that are not creative types don't understand this. But when you are moved or inspired to create, all else can go F itself. A job, school, and sometimes, like, I mean, honest, if I'm being honest, like other people, like I don't care that your leg it just broke and you're bleeding, and I'm creating something right now. Here's my phone, call an ambulance. Like that, right? Like that's so. When you live, and I think this is partly why I was depressed from age like 20 to 39. When you live your life and you got to eat, you got to make money, and so you just get some rinky-dink job, or maybe it's not a rinky-dink job, but it's a job that you wouldn't have chosen if you didn't have to make a living, and you're miserable because that thing that actually is you, that moves you, that is purely, truly you, is being denied. And I think that's why I personally was depressed, because the minute I started admitting to myself that it's okay to be me, as I was packaged, before bursting through the birth canal, I was a C-section, so it doesn't really make it, but you know what I'm saying. I don't know. I think it's just very important that people, if they're creative, that they have to be doing something creative. So like college to me was never, that was for my parents and my grandparents and that generation, the boomers, like for as much as they destroyed this country, no offense boomers, but you kind of did. The one thing that they really did well was getting degreed. Like they loved that they can go to college. And I think they were the first generation where so many of them could go to college. And so, of course, they're going to, overdo it and everything like that. But the world is not built that way anymore. The whole college thing is, to me, it's like a dinosaur in its death throes. The world. There's so many millionaires who haven't even graduated high school yet because they make stupid videos on YouTube. Like you don't need it anymore unless you want to do specific things, or unless, like in your case, you feel like personally I need to do this for me to feel good about me.
Yeah,
right.
And it was something I did. When I failed out. It was a weird year, 9/11, the second week of class. And I think in my head, I used that as an excuse.
I did. Dude, same year, same thing. And to be fair, I think in hindsight, it's easy to beat myself up about that. But at that time, it was I didn't know what the hell was going on. It was a very strange time. So I stopped going to class. But the truth was, I was never really invested in going to school because it was what you did next. So I failed out, came back, went to community college a bit. Tried to force it again. It wasn't happening. And I said, you know what? I really need to kick myself into gear. And that's when I went to the Air Force. When I got out of the Air Force, I did again. I fell into the do what you're supposed to do. Got a job, got a house, made money. Had nothing to do with history, had nothing to do with creativity. I was working for cell phone companies. But it paid well and I could afford a living so I could move out. So it just took all those years. And then around 2014 or 15, I had a traumatic brain injury. I just passed out. And I think you and I were talking about that the other day. Nothing medically wrong with me. I just happened to pass out one day. Yeah.
And I had never passed out before. I think people that have passed out know the feeling when you're going to pass out. Like you kind of your head gets a little
So you could go sit on a couch or something before it happened?
I was like, what the hell's happening? So I go into my bathroom and I look into the mirror. I wanted to look at my eyes to see them. They were dilated. And the next thing I remember, I felt like someone was smashing my head on the wall. What happened was I'm standing above there. I passed out. My chin sliced my chin open on the sink. My head went back, cracked back of my skull. on the floor. So anyway, long story short, months of not being able to work or function. I mean, I couldn't be in a moving car, I think, for maybe 2 months. It was that bad.
Because you get dizzy?
You have a lot of time to think. And I thought to myself, I was just so unhappy with what I was doing. You know, I had everything you're supposed to have, you know, work, house, you know, things like that. But I was just genuinely unhappy. And it was because I wasn't doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of knew at that point, even though it took me another year to do it, that at some point I was going to have to blow this up. At some point I was going to have to face the pain of getting, you know, out of a mortgage that I was underwater on because I bought my house in 2008. Oops, don't do that. So everything was like, you know, I thought I was going to die in that house. I'm never getting out of under this mortgage. And you have to go through pains to do it. I mean, it was a nightmare to go through all that, but I did. And it was all because I knew I wanted to chase what I wanted to do. Long story short, how I end up in England and get a medieval history degree or even doing my bachelor's in England was never planned. It was just me being naturally me. I was like, I love this. I can't believe I've never studied medieval history, but I never would have loved it if I wasn't there, if I didn't see it, if I didn't feel it. And it was so cool when I was learning everything, it was all new. Right? When I went to college in 2001 and I would take a history course, it's the same stuff I learned in high school. It's just at a different level.
Yeah.
Right? So your classics. Even if I was going to study the American Civil War, I wouldn't have loved it. I wouldn't have been vested because it wasn't me wanting to do it. But going to England and studying medieval English history, that was something I loved. And I just soaked that up. And everything I learned, I was like a sponge for it, you know, because it was all new. So.
Sure.
Do you ever return back to that? Have you touched a study or a manuscript or read anything about the Middle Ages since you've come back?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's only been since October. What I did was, because it was a long year, man, like in the COVID world doing a master's study.
In a foreign country.
And all the archives weren't open yet, so it was really hard to do a dissertation, an original study dissertation.
Right.
But I did that, and excellent. I got marked really well. It won an award, so it was really cool that I got that, especially as a foreign student.
Wow.
Right.
So I took some time off, but just over the last couple of weeks, I did a seminar a couple of weeks ago, and that kind of got me going again. And as much as I love American Civil War is my thing. That's till the day I die. That's my thing. But that fascination with medieval history just gives me so many cool options.
It is a fascinating time.
They're not even, they don't correlate. It's like two completely random things. You know?
But it is a fascinating time to learn about. And I loved that David Starkey series about the monarchs. I think it was called Monarchy. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yep, Starkey's.
I love his stuff. Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't think he's related to Ringo Starr, but
no. Well, compared to medieval history, what I study is journalism. So, I mean, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But ideally, you know, as far as what I'm going to do in the future, even at my old age, I think I have so many, not so many options, but, you know, everyone's like, oh, what do you want to do? What do you do? And I'm like, I'll get there. I'll figure that out.
Figure it out. You only come back in October.
Yeah. And it might be a mix of both. I mean, I'd love to teach some form of medieval history, even if it's as like an adjunct professorship, just a very specific thing at a college.
Right.
That would be so cool, like 12th, 13th century.
Yeah.
And then if I can do that and do something with American Civil War history as my career, as my life, that would be perfect. So the shirts have been a way for me to express my creativity, put money in my pocket while I was at school. But, you know, now I'm here speaking to you.
Which is the crowning achievement of your career so far.
Yeah. Thank you. Big crowd here today to see this. Just waving to him, acknowledgement. So, but you just never know where those connections are going to take you to. So
absolutely, and that's the excitement of getting out of your comfort zone. It is scary, and some people fall on their face as soon as they step out of the gate. Other people don't, and I think if you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, the universe just kind of gets out of your way up to a point, and then it steps in the way again to remind you that this too shall pass, and you will fail again, and that shall pass, and then you'll succeed. Like, this never frickin' ends. But I have an idea for you for the medieval stuff.
Yeah,
you could do a podcast, and you call it "Hello, Governor." And
yes.
And yeah, I mean, that's probably a little later on that term and everything. But you know,
Yeah, that would work. I'll tell you what's funny is growing up, I used to do, and I'm not going to do it now and I'll explain why. I used to do it in English accent, right? Because it was funny to me.
Which English accent would you do?
My own, what I would think an English accent is.
Oh,
Now, most
I-
Americans,
Can't do it.
most Americans wouldn't know. I can do, to them, I sounded like an English accent to a point where me
to
and,
who? The English?
no, to Americans.
To Americans, yes.
So at one point, we went into a bar in Philadelphia. We were playing darts.
Right.
All right, it was me and this friend I was talking about, Jeff, and I was like,
Jeff Dartman.
yeah, he's like, why don't you do English, Mike? And I was like, all right. So we went to a Phillies game. We go into this bar, and I'm pretending to be from England, telling them it was my first time in America. They bought us drinks. They let us play right on the dartboard. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I'm literally pretending to be English, like, and the whole bar is into this. Like, oh, it's so cool. Like, how did you think at the Phillies game? I was like, oh, it's great.
It's good.
Yeah. And I don't do this accent now because after living in England, the one thing you realize is
We can't do accents.
no.
Now, okay, but for the edification of the audience and myself, and to set the record straight about English accents,
Yep.
can you do what you thought was an English accent, and can you do what the British have corrected you on, and how a proper English accent should go?
Can I do no?
Can you at least try to mimic or approximate it so that
Right
we
now?
can? Yeah, no.
No.
In May,
No.
Can you
Well,
come down? Can you work
That's a
on this until
ridiculous
May and then come down? It's a ridiculous question. We Americans need to know how to do a British accent.
Which accent are you talking about?
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Where
yeah.
it's like Manchester.
I lived in Kent and I lived in Lincolnshire. And
okay,
they're
Lincolnshire.
different accents. The thing is,
You're not going to do this, are
my
you?
friends would kill me if I tried to. My English friends, because they'd be
They're
like,
not going to hear this.
Yes, they will.
No,
'Cause someday when
I
this
have
goes-
it blocked in England.
No, they're going to come after you for the hello, governor thing.
Hello, governor.
Yeah, I'm going to give them.
They don't like that?
No.
They don't talk that way?
No, they don't.
When you got off the plane, the taxi driver didn't go, hello, governor.
That's
Where
what he
to?
did. He did, and actually the Queen was there and she was waving to me. I was like, oh, thank you.
Hello, welcome, Michael.
Yes.
Yes.
That's actually
And that's
exactly,
how she talks.
Exactly what happened.
Name a class and I'll give you their accent.
Name a class.
Yeah, she's upper class, right?
Sure.
Upper crust. Says, oh, they all talk like this. Who's here?
Yeah.
Right.
As
And then the cab drivers, hello, governor. And then where were you? Who would you say that you were like middle class hanging out with those people
Sure,
there?
middle class people.
Right. So they're more like this perhaps. And then, well, that's it. You got cab drivers, middle class, and the Queen, right?
For a second there, I actually thought I
Thank
was in
you.
England.
Thank
and I'm
you.
like,
It's like, what?
I didn't even have anything to drink today.
Did I get
but
kicked
think-
in the head by a mule? Because I feel like I'm in England. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. Bring it back to seriousness.
So being over there,
Yeah.
and of course, we are from the English, we
Correct.
established
Right.
history lesson there, not Civil War. Do you see some correlation between some of the English accents and maybe some of the regional American accents?
I think where I live in southern New Jersey and near Philadelphia, there's certain words we say that we get made fun of that are pretty close to the actual English accent, like
Yeah.
the word home.
Home.
Yeah, that's how I say home. Going
Home.
Yeah.
They say home.
Yes, it's very
Home.
close. Or go.
Go.
That's how I say go.
Go. Oh,
But-
I never put that together. That's a. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
mean, there's especially those two words, because anywhere I go in America, I'm going to get picked out for where I live. When I go, yeah, I'm going home.
Home.
People are like,
Yeah.
the hell's wrong with you? Just have like a
Stroke?
Yeah.
Are you from
but-
Delaware?
But it's funny. Those were the only words that when an English person hears me say it, they're like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly." What
Yeah.
that sounds like. Are you doing an English accent? I'm
Yeah.
like, no,
No.
I'm from South Jersey, man.
No.
Like, I'm going to Wawa.
So that's interesting. So then, and so my thing has always been the Southern accents. Like, where the hell did they come from? And like the upper class Southern, like the aristocratic type of way of talking, the way the plantation owners might have talked, at least the way they do in the movies, because we don't know, because we've never heard these people. But that kind of like kind of lofted kind of way of speaking and everything, to me, is close to a British accent. But after years of not hearing legitimate British accents, generations go by, and then it just turns into this thing.
It does.
And then you have the lower classes that don't have the education per se, and so they talk like they got a mouthful of marbles sometimes.
Well, even with that, even in England,
Yeah, the Cockneys.
I think so.
Right?
For instance, the big thing is that they're used to the soft R, right? So not really, that R sound almost everywhere in the country is not pronounced.
Right.
Right. But in the West Country, it's a hard R. If they talk an R, they pronounce that R like we would.
The West Country. Where was that?
So like
Wales,
Cornwall,
or Cornwall. Okay.
Yeah. And they'll pronounce it. It's the only place really in that country. There's a couple other of those old Britain places, like near Wales, but they'll use that hard R still, which is very un-English today. But it's very likely that when they came and colonized America, that accent would have, that soft R probably didn't really exist coming over to the Americas. That's more of an adaptation of 18th, 19th century England getting away, its own shift of how they speak.
Interesting.
So the fact that we're using a hard R, when we say road, not necessarily road, but...
Because what would they say? Woad?
No, that's why I said not road. None of it starts with an R.
You're saying where it ends with an R.
Aware, where we have that R at the end, and they just say aware.
Aware, yeah.
And,
So you think that when people started coming here from England, it was during the time where they still used the hard R, and in the meantime, they said, okay, we got rid of those idiots. Now let's do it the right way. Soft R.
And I'm not a linguistics kind of person, and I'm sure there is an actual history to this. Right. But the fact that in their own country it's even changed just makes it less strange that our own have changed. The Southern accent, the New England kind of accent.
I just had a crazy idea. You said around about 1700s, 1800s is when that shift starts to really happen, really.
More into the 19th century, too.
So we're talking about the Industrial Revolution, and this is where we're starting to see that separation of the classes, especially when it comes to economics. So I think you're not too far off, Matt. I think when you're talking about classes, wouldn't they linguistically try to differentiate themselves from one class to the other based on what's going on in the country at the time?
And they could, and I'm sure that might have been what it was.
Well, how about the upper class here in the United States speaking like they're British? That's not real.
No, but that's like forced. That's like really annoying.
But that's what I'm saying. But they're trying to separate themselves from the rest of us.
But then again, it goes back to that idea of us versus them, trying to differentiate yourself from everybody else.
Yeah, so some accents could just be a lack of education, and other accents could be too much education that they can't stand the uneducated, and they want to do something that really differentiates them from those other people.
But there's also
the goofy accent.
There's also things like the Cockney accent, which is a lower class London kind of thing, where they're purposefully cutting, like you said,
R's.
They're cutting out the H's.
Hello, Harry.
Yeah. Yeah, they won't pronounce that H. But
why don't we go to Hartford and get rid of this LO?
But that's a badge of honor of being that kind of working class London kind of person. So they're not separating themselves on the top end.
Right.
They're purposefully letting people know where they're from and just kind of taking that in as their own badge of honor.
I think that super rich class that thinks they're better than everybody doesn't understand that there are people on the very bottom of the ladder who would rather die than be in that class of people. Not everybody wants to. Everybody thinks they want to have a lot of money and be rich, and I'm sure everybody does, but nobody wants to be in that class. There's only a certain type of asshole that wants to be rich and hang out with the rich. It's different. So I could believe that people would be proud to be a cab driver and keep that Cockney accent and everything. And I don't mean to keep picking on cab drivers. I'm just using that to juxtapose to the Queen. Because if you're not the Queen, what are you? A cab driver, right?
That's
or everybody else. I mean, let's be real. No, that's cool though. I'm kind of fascinated with England and in a very casual way, their history. It's enough to just be into the Gettysburg stuff. I'm like, I can't. But every once in a while, I need a palate cleanser, and I will look up, a documentary or something about one of the kings or queens, and just it's a very fascinating country, and they're our cousins, so we are related to them in some way, and without them, we wouldn't be here. So we have to tip the hat, if you will. All right, so let's see. What else? So, all right, so let's get back to Civil War teas a little bit here. People have seen the designs everywhere. What if someone would you entertain if someone sent you guys an email and said, hey, I got an idea for a design. Would you do it? If it was good, if you thought it was good,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Brian,
I mean,
Brian,
yeah, Brian.
Brian could do it, right? Okay.
Like that Harry Heath one was an
Yes.
idea. The other real popular one, the John Burns one.
Get off my lawn.
Yep.
Yep.
Two guys I know, John and Kevin, had come to me with this, and we decided we were going to sell that and use it. The initial sale of that, when we raised funds for it, was going directly to, at the time, Civil War Trust. So, you know, we do take in certain ideas. Now, we do get a lot of messages of people that have ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to tell people, like, you know, either that's not the best idea, or maybe it's people also have ideas that aren't easy to turn into visual things.
Right.
Like, there's so many ideas, there's so many hours of Brian's I've wasted of saying, hey, I've got this great idea. And he spends like all night doing it.
And it just
I
doesn't
wake
work.
up and I'm like, God, no, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And, you know, for him, you know, we've known each other long enough now that it's not a problem. But there's
Right.
definitely some nights where I just know he was like,
Oh yeah, and I wonder about that with Ty, because he'll send me something and I'll be like, yeah, a little less on the smoke or something.
Yeah.
And then he goes a little less on the smoke, and I go, no, that's too much less on the smoke. I'm talking just a touch, and you know, and he'll go back and forth, and I know that when I used to do visual work with video and photography and stuff like that, I hated that.
Yep.
That's why I was not cut out for the editing side of things. It's like, I just, no.
No, and it's why, you know, Brian and I, for all those years, it really takes years of working with someone to remove those frustrations. And still, we're going to do things one way or the other that's still going to frustrate the other person.
Sure.
That's natural. That's called being business partners.
Right.
But we have less of those now. I would try and waste less. In fact, I thought I probably took it harder than Brian did for his hours wasted. You know, where I'm like, oh, dude, I am so sorry. He's like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I know exactly.
You know, he's
what
got
you're
4
talking
kids. He's like, oh, none of them ate today because I was, you know, working on this crappy design you thought of. And I'm like, oh, wow, thanks for the passive aggressiveness,
about. I
Brian.
left a box of Oreos on the floor for them
Like, I hear the
while I worked on this
the
for
kid's
you.
crying in the background. He's like, oh, you want less smoke? Is that what you want? All right, hold on. I got to make less smoke. Yeah.
No,
So-
honey, you have to sit in your dirty diaper until Daddy fixes the amount of smoke for Uncle Mike.
But that is the hard part. So if you go to the website and there's, I don't know what we have, like, let's say we have 30 designs on there.
Yeah.
There's 90 that didn't work. You know,
Oh, yeah.
There's so many ideas, and there's other ideas I have. It's just sometimes it doesn't work. So people will say, hey, I have an idea for a shirt. You know, and sometimes it's just like, look, if it's not something that we know we can sell X of,
right.
since we work for ourselves, frankly, sometimes it's just not worth the hours it takes to create it.
Sure.
I'm sure we'd love to have 1 million shirts on there. But the other thing is, too, like I said, bangers only. We only want to try and have, not every shirt's perfect, but you don't want to have this huge boutique of 500 shirts.
too much to
go
choose
through.
from.
No, so
But yeah, I get the idea of, you know, like we just want to make bangers, but it's like a band going into a studio saying we're only putting #1 hits on it. You don't know what a banger.
absolutely.
So like sometimes you have to just throw something out there that might be media. I find one man's trash is another man's treasure is a very true statement, because like I paint, and I've had paintings on display in cafes and things like that. And it was usually, usually the way it went was like the one that I was most proud of, and the one that when I would go in there, I would look at it and be like, man, I'm so proud of that one. Just sat there for months and years and collected dust. And then I had one that I absolutely hated, and I was like, this sucks. This isn't the way it came. I wanted it to come out. I'll just fucking put it in the thing, and you know, let the chips fall where they may. Like within a day, they're calling me saying, hey, that painting you put up yesterday, this lady wants to buy it. So I was like, oh, okay. So she bought it. And then a week later, a woman came in and she goes, what happened to the painting that was over there? I really wanted to get it. And he called me and he's like, hey, there's a woman here. She wants to know what happened to the painting that you sold last week. And she wants to know if she could commission you to do it again. Yeah. I'm like, I hate that painting. Like, it was a horrible painting. But nobody really knows. Like, one man's trash is another man's treasure. So the same thing with shirts or anything else. Like, sometimes you have to throw it out there and see how the public reacts. Because except for people who listen to our show and buy your T-shirts, the public has no taste.
Yeah. Well, I have. I'm not going to say that about Mr. Public. I like you. So we're
No, I said except for
Mr. Public. Yeah, I'm right there. Yeah.
Yeah, if they don't like your T-shirts and they don't like our show, they don't have taste. It's very obvious.
I understand, but I'm still not going to slight Mr. Public. I'm sorry.
What we're doing by saying that is
exactly
pressuring them into liking us because they don't want to be on the outs. It's very simple.
There are people I'll reach out to and show designs to get their feedback. And what you just said about your trash and treasure kind of thing. There was some designs for the Philly stuff, the Philly sports shirt stuff. I remember I was at a bar with someone, and I was showing her some of the stuff we didn't use. I was like, "Yeah, here's some of the stuff we didn't." She's like, "I really like that. Like, you didn't use that?" I'm like, "Nah, it's weak. It's like it's not." She's like, "No, I really like it." We put it up, and then we had 20 something sales that week of that shirt. And what you have to do is, I try and make shirts I think that I would wear. Right? That's where it starts.
Right.
But then sometimes you also have to be kind of humble in the thought that some things you really like other people aren't going to like, and some things that you make that you're being a perfectionist, kind of like, oh, this isn't it. Some people love that stuff.
Absolutely.
So it's really about getting feelers out and things like that. And what's neat about the way Civil War Tees is set up is we make much less per shirt than you would if you were screening and you had a store.
Sure,
Everything I do is custom print to order, right?
Right.
Which is why every shirt's available in every size and different indigo, navy, whatever you want. The other advantage of that is sometimes we can take a chance and release a shirt. And if 500 people buy it, that's amazing. If 3 people buy it, we didn't really spend anything but our time to find that out.
That's the beauty, because so you're using a third-party site to process the orders?
Not a site. I have a printing partner that I've worked with for years.
Okay. So he works with you because most printers won't do that. So that's why a lot of we use a third party site because we can't find a printer who will do it to order. It's just not worth it for them. So and also I don't want to deal with shipping. It's just I wear 75 hats already. I can't a 76 one.
It's someone that we had worked with in the Philly stuff for years. So it was a
so you already had you already had that relationship.
Because without that relationship and the way this is set up, this probably wouldn't happen because I didn't have the capital to take a chance of printing 300 something shirts hoping people will buy it. And that's how we started with the Philly sports stuff. And not only is it a risk of having, you're sitting on 3 smalls because no one wants a small of that, but it's the time it takes to pack and ship. And
it's too much. And then, and really, if you think about all the effort it's worth, you should be charging more and nobody would buy it at that point. So it's just like, yeah. I remember when we started Gettysburg, we bought 2 boxes of T-shirts. One were navy blue, one were gray, and they had our logo on them. And we were left with a bunch of smalls, and so I ended up using them as rags. At the end, it was just nobody bought these because we live in America and very few people are small, and even people who are small eventually are going to be a little larger, No,
absolutely.
And so small just wasn't popular, and so we didn't use it. And so they make great rags, but they were high quality rags too, because these were good T-shirts. But it's so much easier now to just use these third party things. What do you have in store for us as far as T-shirts that are coming out that maybe you want to wet the whistle of the public about?
Well, that's top secret information.
Nothing you can promote yet. Nothing to create a buzz.
No, we always have. When I come up with an idea, even if it's just a basic word or a phrase or quote or something, we use Trello, which I think is now owned by someone else. But basically, it's like a card system online, so I can create a card for something. Brian can go in and see what I've placed under this, like an idea card. I can put images in there. So Trello, yeah. So each card we use is its own. Each design has its own card, and then Brian can put sketches in there. Brian can put feedback. So it's basically each of these little cards is its own conversation, which is way better than trying to communicate through email, text, because everything stays in its own design, its own place.
Right.
And that works really well. So we use that, and we always will have 3 or 4 or 5 designs. I'll have them lined up in order of, how important I think they are. And what'll happen is Brian's a hardworking dad. He's got kids, married. This is not his full-time job. I can always come up with ideas, but we can only get them done, when Brian has it's tough, because I don't, when he has time to get in there, and not just the time, because time is one thing, but to have that creativity, because you said you paint, right? And if you're not feeling it, it's not going to happen.
Listen, I've got 26 blank canvases at home because I keep buying new canvases thinking that's going to inspire me to paint something that day. And yesterday I was putting one of the canvases up in my painting room and I go, you know what? Enough. Fill these canvases up first, you idiot. Like, in buying a new color. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it just, when we come out with designs, it's always when it's a good time for both of us. Because a lot of people are like, oh, what's coming out next? What's coming out next? And I don't ever have an answer for that. Because when that happens is when it happens. And what's cool is, since it's not our full-time job and since it really is our passion, that we're not really in any rush.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, you can enjoy it. You can enjoy the process. Absolutely. And it is a fun process to create something, especially with someone else, because once it's done, you could both look at it and go like, wow, we did this together. We didn't kill each other. We might have been annoyed by each other once in a while, but we didn't kill each other.
And more than the money, and I'm not being sarcastic, the money's good, right? Everything we do because we need income to get by and to survive.
Yeah, you have to have it.
But for me, way more important and way more fulfilling for both of us, for Brian and I, is when we've worked together for hours on this. I had an idea in my head. I put it in there. He started it. We went through 3, 4, 5 edits. We put it out. Someone buys it. It goes out to their house. And then we go on Instagram and we see someone tagged us and they're wearing it out on the battlefield.
Yeah.
It's so unique to me that something you made, not something that you, like your big company sells, right? But something that you made, an idea, an image that was just in your head. Someone said, yes, I'm going to give you money for that. Yes, this is awesome. And they're wearing it somewhere that's meaningful to them. That is the high of highs for me. Like I will never tire of that.
It is a nice high.
It is.
I had a high the other night. I wasn't feeling well, so I didn't go to the lectures on Sunday. And Eric went and recorded them for me. And when he came by to return the recorder, we were talking, and I said, well, how were the lectures today? And he, oh, good. He goes, there was a listener at the Tim's lecture, and he recognized me, and he came over and started talking to me. And Eric was perplexed that anybody recognized him. He's like, I don't understand why people recognize me. I try to not be involved on camera and everything. I go, Eric, Sunday nights you sit in your freaking chair at your house and you do a live show on Facebook. Like, what do you mean people aren't going to recognize you? You're doing all the wrong things if you don't want to be recognized, But that was the high to me, was that someone else was recognized because they listened to something I created. Yeah. And there was a time when Mike, we were all on Remembrance Day. Remember, we were at Farnsworth, and one of the listeners was there. He came over and said hi. Mike was there. Cam was there. If you don't know Cam, he's another big star that we made. And I was there, and there were several other people. Right. And this guy came over, said hi to us. And when I introduced him to Mike, he was, oh, and then I introduced him to Cam, he was, oh, and then other people came in, and they were all, oh. And then this guy noticed, and he goes, man, this must suck for Mac, because they're all getting the attention. And I was like, no.
Yeah.
They're getting the attention because I put them out there, and people agreed with me that they're worth knowing. And so there's so many highs that come with this stuff, But yeah, I mean, we have, it's funny. Do you encourage or ask people to hashtag you and share the picture where they go somewhere, or are people just doing that?
People just do it.
See, nobody does that for us. Very few people have done that for us. And we've sold a good deal of t-shirts. And maybe I would say I can remember 5 people maybe posting them wearing it, or posting that it just came in the mail or something over 3 years. So I need to start asking people to do that.
There's some times that, I have a good amount of pictures of people wearing shirts as it is, but then there's sometimes you want.
I have a good amount of people not wearing shirts.
Well, what I mean is, I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's anything wrong with even putting something out and say, hey, if you have one, send us a picture.
No, there is. I don't know. I don't think there is.
Because people like to do that for you.
Yes.
And especially now that you've told them you'd like
now
that.
they'll do it.
Yeah, now they're going to do it
especially when they buy their
guilt.
Yeah.
Because you just pitied them into doing it.
Especially when they buy their Tim Smith cool t-shirt at addressinggettysburg.com/shop. But yeah, now do you have a Tim Smith shirt? You should make a Tim Smith shirt.
I don't. I only have Tim Smith holding a shirt.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. Mike showed me that picture.
Yeah, it was really, when we came out with the,
to get off my lawn.
With the Burns one. I emailed him and I was like, hey, got this cool shirt. I'd love to give you one for free. And he's like, cool. He's like, I'll give you a couple.
No way. He said, cool.
Yeah. I know that might come. There might even be some sticker or something or a shirt with that on there.
There is.
So we were raising that money for the Civil War Trust at that time with the pre-orders. And he was kind enough to give me 2 signed books.
Oh, that's nice.
So we picked 2 random people that pre-ordered that shirt. And again, we donated all that money to the Civil War Trust, now American Battlefield Trust, which is another thing my shirts do. We make even less money than less money because we donate a couple dollars from every single shirt to the American
because
Battlefield
the
Trust.
markup on these things, for me at least, I mean, it might be cheaper since you know the printer, but like for me doing the third party thing, the markup can't be too high for me to make a profit because otherwise no one would buy it. It would be too expensive.
No, and
so like you really only get like per shirt, you're getting like a few bucks.
What happens is online, it's very, very few and far between. We have someone that says something about the price. We have a lot of people because I'll tell you right now, I think we charge like $25 a shirt to get one shirt shipped to most places, states where you pay tax. People give us $32 for a shirt. It's a lot of money because if you go into town, you can get a shirt $15 for $12.
What in 1989?
No, but I mean, just like
there's no shirt place in town.
Just like a single thing that says Gettysburg on it.
Yeah.
Like some.
That's not $15.
Oh yeah.
What are you talking about?
Listen, I haven't looked around.
It's about as expensive as $30.
Yeah,
They're
then
not
I need
cheap.
to start charging more money.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
But it's custom. It's custom printed. The ink job is really good. We use a really nice shirt.
Oh no, the shirt you sent me one of the get off my lawn shirts, and it is nice. I wouldn't say surprised. I was pleased with the quality of it. It was a nice shirt. The graphic on it, it looked like a quality shirt.
And even since then, now we're making less money because we're using even more expensive ones. But again, it's not even so much about trying to make X amount per shirt for us. I think it's a fair number to ask for someone. And if people are buying it, then it tells me then it's right. It's in a good spot, and we're still making a couple bucks.
I'm telling you,
we like that we get to donate some of that money too because I don't know the exact number, but somewhere around.
You.
Oh, thank you.
It's a little. I gave him the Tim Smith cool sticker.
Are you going to bill me for this?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I'll send it to you.
Awesome. Cool.
You can just buy me dinner.
But anyway, yeah. So again, not so much about money as we ask money for the shirts because they're not free, but it gives me an opportunity like this, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't even planned because when I'm talking about the shirts for me is a great way to try and entrench myself in the Civil War world.
Yes,
I know Ken Rich. Happy belated birthday, Ken.
That's how we met at Ken's birthday.
We were both invited.
We were the only ones there. No, there was the 2 other people, and then there was Ken and Pat.
And they were just doing a little get together
for Ken's 70th.
Yeah, you walked in and I was like, I know him. I was like, oh.
See, I told you I thought you were someone else, and I was ready to yell at you.
I'm wondering. Because I'm like, I usually shake someone's hand, and you slapped me across the face, and I'm like, all right, hi.
And then Ken's like, no, it's not him. It's not him. And I go, oh, sorry, I'm Matt.
Yeah. Unique way to meet someone, but it's memorable.
Yeah.
And
I looked at him and I said, hello, governor. And then shook his hand.
Yeah.
No, after this is after the slap.
After the slap. Because he said, how dare you? And then I'm like,
yes. I challenge you to a duel.
Yeah. But no, it's just you just never know who you're going to meet and get out and do things. And my shirts have always given me that chance to get entrenched in what I love, and that is the American Civil War. And to be honest, it's specifically the Battle of Gettysburg.
Right. And the Battle of Gettysburg is the big dog. It is the most interesting one. I've told you this before, and I know you don't believe me, but I tell you that most of my audience, I'm sure, knows of your work and likes your work, and is probably a good chunk of them has bought some of your work. So I appreciate you doing that, ladies and gentlemen, because when you do, it says to people like Mike, maybe I should go on the show more often because these people are supportive. And that's the whole idea. 6 questions.
So where can we find your products?
Well, we thought of using a really creative domain name, and you can get them at civilwartees.com.
Oh.
Yeah, TEES.
Right. Yeah, make sure you get that in there. It's not tease.
No, or TASE, because that's a whole different that's a great company idea, Civil War Tees. right?
Where
We'll
you
talk about that later.
Okay, yes, I got it, and I'm loving it because I do drink tea.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean that.
Oh,
tea, yeah.
I like that even better.
Like the.
Yeah, I gotcha. By the way, let me tell you a story. I'm going to end with this story.
Is it the Benner's Hill?
Yesterday, we go to so Benner's Hill. For those of you who haven't been there, this might not make sense to you, but imagine in one of those old like skeleton keys. Okay, except there's no little teeth at the end. So just imagine a bar with a circle at the end, like a little loop or something. That's what the road at Benner's Hill is. Okay, you come off of the Hanover Ave or Hanover Road, and you just go straight down to the end. And there's a cul-de-sac there with a little island. You just loop around and you go back out. There was a van, like a 15-passenger van there. It had New York plates, right? It was New York plates?
I think it was New York plates. We don't want to say it because it's someone's plate.
Oh, yeah.
It was.
Oh, I almost said it, too.
It was a vanity plate.
It was a vanity plate. And I see it's so hard now because I'm not saying that I should have not said the state because now.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, the vanity plate had something to do with tickling. Let's put it like that. Or at least it looked that way, right? There was the word or the letters TICK or TCK or something like that, right? We just drove by real quick because we really. But as we passed it, I said something like that. Did that vanity plate say tickle something? He's like, yeah, it absolutely did. And there's one guy in this van.
Big, long van, too. Like 4 rows of seats.
This is a passenger van.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the purpose of bringing a large group of people somewhere. And this guy's up there in the driver's seat. And I mean, he's just like, he could have been dead now that I'm thinking about it, because he's just kind of just sitting there, right? He's not moving, doesn't seem to be looking at anything. He's not reading anything. And I'm wondering what's going on in the back of that van with the tickle monster or whatever his license plate was. Sitting up there at the front. And then but just as we got to the end of the road, I said, I bet you something's going on. And I said, I'll bet you this is a place where people go for some nefarious reasons. Won't go into detail on that. Use your imagination.
Or they were reading a book together and didn't want to be disturbed.
It's also a great place to go to not be disturbed if you're like studying.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Playing checkers, competitive checkers.
Competitive checkers. You can get some practice in, and you don't want to scare people with all the yelling. This is a good place to go. Or a little pickle tickle. Yeah. So anyway, so he is sitting there, and I said, I guarantee I know what's going on. The van is facing that way on purpose because it's facing the entrance of the road. He's up front. We didn't see anything in the back. The windows weren't tinted. And it was all windows, so I didn't see any heads or anything like that. But there's the floor and there's benches. Like the seats back there are not captain's chairs. They're benches. So God knows what's going on below the window line. And he's the lookout.
Yeah. And of all the places in the park, as we're going, we're thinking that's the perfect place.
That's the perfect place.
Because it's only one entry point.
Right.
It's all surrounded by private property woods.
Yep.
And it's a long road. You have a good
You've got time to say, everybody zip up.
Or put the checkers away.
Yeah, or put the checkers away.
Yeah, if it's not a sanctioned match.
Right.
You don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to get in trouble for that illegal
I'm telling you,
checker play.
I've had so much fun hanging out with you the last couple of days because you're funny. Yeah, and you've got a very dry sense of humor and the way you deliver it, and I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, civilwartees.com is the place to go to get these awesome shirts. Everybody loves them. You should too if you don't already, but I'm sure you do. Mike, thank you very much for doing this. It was really great meeting you and hanging out with you. 6 questions. Thank you very much for popping in and joining this and adding to the discussion, as you always do. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening or watching, as the case may be. Goodbye. All right. Very good there, boys. Very good.
I enjoyed that.
I did too.
And I didn't cry. That was the key. I was like, oh, don't cry today. This out of anxiety.